good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to this new workshop of Startup Grind with Startup Grind Budapest in the process of the European Startup Universe. Startup Grind, per se, is the largest startup community in the world, and we aim to enable every company to enhance and develop their business. During this workshop, Leo Benkel from Pure Lambda, a fireside chat that we had right before with very interesting insights, will share us his insight and also get you closer to what is an MVP, a most valuable product. And what I would like to ask you is, if you like, just ask your questions in the chat or via the Q&A feature. But now, without further ado, I would like to invite Leo to take over and to guide us through the minimum viable product.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Leo. Thank you, Steve and Startup Grind for having me as a speaker today. And first, let's get the networking promotion out of the way. So I'm gonna copy paste my little snippet, and everybody do the same, like that. We can all say where we are, and we can all share our LinkedIn so that it's done, and we don't have to do it while we do the presentation. So while everybody does that, I'm going to introduce myself. So my name is Leo Bankel. I'm an advisor, mentor, an investor, also an engineer. Apparently, I'm also a doctor. This is an article from Silicon Luxembourg. And if you'd like to learn more, there is my website at purelambda.com. So today we're going to talk about how to build an MVP. If anybody in the audience want to share, like if they're a founder, if they're technical, what industry they work in, what stage they're at, that would be awesome to see, like, what is the audience we're having today. People are being very shy today. I know it's early, it's only 11 a.m.
And there's a small delay from what the people see and what we are thinking. So just go ahead and then we take it from there.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. So first, I want to get out of the way like the pre-requirement, because you don't want to build an MVP like day one of creating the company. So there's like a few little things you can get out of the way first. For instance, you want to define a persona that would be your target end user. You want to figure out if your paying customer will be the same as your end user. You want to have some kind of idea about what business model you're going to have. Is it a subscription? Is it like a one-off? Like, how are you gonna monetize? And during the MVP phases, you're gonna test a few things, but still have some ideas. You might also want to have a prototype that shows that the technology, if it's a new technology, is feasible. And you want to have an idea of what is going to be, or what is your value differentiating. Like, why are you different from your competition? In terms of methodology, you want to use modern tooling, modern methodology, modern processes like Agile. You want to use modern computer languages, like Golang, Python, React. You want to have like task management platform like Trello or ClickUp. You want to have code versioning like GitHub or GitLab. Like, all of that should have been figured out like during the prototyping phase, during the like figuring out who's your end users, those type of thing. So when you have your persona, you probably already have, but let's go over pretty quickly, like a user scenario, what it would be like to use your product. So the power of storytelling is that it gives you empathy and connect to the persona. It can create feelings like love and fear and sadness, or happiness, or it can inspire to make people want to join you. You can let you imagine what it's like to be in their situation, and people remember stories. How to tell stories? So you want a persona, a goal, and a challenge that this persona is facing. And you want a structure, with like a clear start, middle, and end, and you want to engage the listener. So you will have your persona that is in a specific situation. They encounter a problem that would be the problem your company is trying to solve. They will think about a solution, and your implementation will fulfill this need. Usually I do that interactively, but it seems like people are still asleep this morning. They haven't had their coffee. So I'm going to read you like a story that I came up with for just a virtual product. So it's nothing based on reality. It's just like an idea. So imagine Julia is 34 years old with a 4 years old son. She works as a chef in the cafeteria of a big company. She needs to be updated on the well-being of her son during the day, and she's pretty tech savvy. So you see here that defines the kind of persona we're targeting. She wants to keep in touch with her son while being at work, but her time can be hard to manage between stressful lunchtime and quiet in between hours. She has tried live camera, but she might be missing important moments when the babysitter needs her. She also had tried to simply let the babysitter call her when they need help, but that is not working during the company rush lunchtime when Julia does not have the time to stop her work to pick up the phone. So you see, that's the problem. It's like, what is the problem that Julia is facing in her daily life? So she would like a system that can alert her in case of emergency and interrupt her work. The system should also be able to track events throughout the day so she can look at it when the load of work slowed down. So that's her need. And now you can introduce your product, your solution. It's like using the Baby Alert app. Julia can communicate with her babysitter through video in case of emergency. During the day, the babysitter can send her notes to look at later when work allows, and Julia is now at peace. And so that's the solution. And now you're like, how does she feel? Julia is now at peace during work, knowing she won't miss any of the small moments while being alerted in case of emergency. So you see, that define your persona, and that also define what your product should look like, and that will guide you when you develop your MVP. So now that you have a story, you want to extract features out of it. Like, what is required to build this product? First, list everything. Like, make a gigantic list. You can make a spreadsheet, whatever support you like. You can have post-it all over the wall, and make sure to list like everything your mind you can imagine, and do that with a team. Do that with other people. So the more ideas, the better. Then you're gonna want to sort them in things that are like not useful, things that are nice to have, and things that are essential. Like in the user scenario, is it if we go back to Julia, do you think it's useful to have a user profile with photos? Sure, it's useful, but it's not very useful for like to convert people. Would you like a review system for the babysitter? Is that something that is a differentiating value for your company? Do you want to have a login system? So that seems like more essential, right? You can't connect to any babies. You want to connect to yours. Is it necessary to have a video chat? Apparently, when we described the problem and the solution, that was part of the solution. So you see how you can sort things per like degrees of need to make your product be the reality that you describe in your story. So here, same thing. If people want to tell a story, go for it. But it seems like people are still sleeping, so I'm gonna go ahead. Like, for instance, if you take Tesla, the essential feature of this company, feature if we can call that, is to have an electric car, right? A nice to have would be to have the touchscreen dashboard, provide information and give a better user experience. But what is not very useful is like the ludicrous mode, it's like super fast or playing video games on a touchscreen. Like, you can afford to build those things when you have an established in brand. It allows you to add more marketing and maybe attract more customers, but that's not like part of your minimal value product. So what are the objectives of an MVP? Like, what do you want to build that? So first of all, you want to test attraction. Are people interested by the solution? You want to know that people have the problem, and that's what's done earlier. When you figured out your persona, you already know that people experience this problem, but now you want to see that people are willing to use your product to solve this specific problem, and that will go that drive us to the business. Is it a valid business model? Are people willing to pay your product for this solution? So let's dive more closer to what the MVP is, right? So we, at this moment, since with the previous slide we saw, right, we have a list of features, and we were able to sort the ones that we wanted more or less, right? So what is the MVP? MVP is a minimum valuable product. It has a minimum set of features to prove that your solution is valuable. And that means you remove all the fluff, right? And that's the reason for that is that you want to develop it as fast as possible. So it's like the step after a prototype. Let's say you're developing a brand new technology, nobody has done it before. You want to test that the technology is feasible, and then you wrap the product around it, make it something usable by users. And it's kind of like a beta. I don't know if you play video game, there's the alpha version, the beta test. Usually the alpha is kind of like the prototype, like nothing work. You just see that it's feasible. And the beta is more like, okay, let's test more things, come in and try together. So that kind of looks like that. You would have the POC and prototypes that takes the technology, then the MVP that tries the product, then you might have a soft launch to bring more people into the MVP, and then you get the public version, and then you slowly get to product market fit. And that's kind of like how it goes, is that you validate hypotheses as you go further, right? You have a broad idea about your market, and you solidify slowly how it will serve your market the best. So you can have this kind of loop, right? You start with your idea, you make a prototype, and as you get more user, you get more feedback. And as you get more feedback, you can improve the prototype. At some point, your prototype becomes MVP, and then it will become a real product as you add more feature and find your niche. I'm sure you've seen this chart before with early adopter. So the MVP is during this early adoption part of thing. Like you slowly get users that are willing to try new things, and then going from MVP to product is when you cross this chasm where people needs to be so happy about it that they become your ambassador and talk about the rest of the general of the population. So how do you design your MVP? So first of all, make plans. Have some drawings, wireframe, and always keep in mind that you want to serve this persona that you've targeted. You want it to be minimal, like nothing extra, right? Ask yourself for everything, is like, is it necessary? If it's not necessary, don't implement it. Focus on what you want to test. You want the feedback loop, because the goal of the MVP is to collect feedback. So if you don't have a way to collect feedback, there is no point of having an MVP. The branding, you can start already to test your brand, your logo, your colors. If you have something with tons of color, maybe you want to brand more funky. If you have something like more classy or more modern, like test that out as well. You want to try your business model, so you want to implement that as well. And be careful. You could have a free MVP, being like, okay, this is an early beta and I'm gonna put it free out there to see if people want to use it. But be careful, because you're not going to validate one of the critical important parts, which is what we talked about earlier here. You won't be able to test if it's a valid business model or if customers are willing to pay if you put it for free. So make sure to have a business model that is scalable. Like maybe, put it at 50 cents a month or €1 a month, but make it, if you go from free to pay, you're gonna lose most of your user, and then you're gonna lose everything you learn, because the feedback you've learned would have been from people that are not willing to pay. So keep that in mind when you decide if you wanted to make it a paying prototype or not. In terms of features, so back to it, you want it frugal, like only spend money when you sure you get return, right? We're gonna talk about it after if we still have time. In terms of return on investment, right? What is the cheapest thing you can build for the highest return? And iterate. You don't have to build everything at once, and you can have several versions of your MVP. So build the first things, then add more things as you talk with user and learn more about what will be the target. You also need to decide, like, do you want to use no-code technology? That might be easier to spin up the prototype with no-code, but keep in mind that usually no-code is not scalable. So that can be a decision, like you do it by yourself as a prototype, as an MVP with no-code. And then when you prove the market, maybe you get funding and hire an engineering team to make it more stable and reliable. Or you want to go straight for it, but it will take longer. Or maybe you have a big budget and then you're gonna just hire a team to build a MVP for you. You can also make it handmade. Like if you think that you need an AI, maybe you do, but at first try to do it by hand just to see if that's really something that is worth it. Maybe you can just hire an offshore team to do it at first, just fake it until you make it, right? And then you can implement the AI and hire data scientist. when you do it manually, that allow you to take notes and see what are the steps. So you can do what's called like a concierge MVP, where things that should be automated are done manually, and that helps you to know where you should focus your effort first, because you know what is the longest time spent on each of the part of your process. So what will go wrong during your process? Everything. So traction might go wrong. Maybe you don't have enough visitors to find the right user. So then you're gonna have to focus on marketing, branding, SEO. Maybe the conversion doesn't work. Like maybe you have people visiting, but they don't install the app or they don't sign up. So then you have to look at A/B testing, branding, user experience. Maybe you're not providing the right thing. So always try to find a way to communicate with those users, because they're gonna tell you, "I was interested. I clicked on the website, but then when I got here, I didn't like it." The friction is important. Maybe there's too many clicks, or too many steps from the user to get to the solution. When they click on your website, that means they experience the problem that you're targeting, but maybe it's too hard to get to the solution. Technology. So if you're using no code, especially, there is like a maximum growth that you can get, and maybe you need to change the way you do it. And in this case, you can hire an expert to guide you. Ambition, maybe you cut off too much, and that's possible. I told you like to just keep exactly what's essential, but some user, depending on your market, might expect more. If you are targeting I don't know, elderly, they might be not as tech savvy, and so you need to invest into tutorial and way to increase adoption. If you are targeting another market, the different culture, maybe you need to learn what are expected as the basics. So the MVP is to test the market, right? And so it tests that the solution you offer is what the market wants. And it's possible that you're going to pivot, right? You're going to see that the MVP is not what the market wants, and you're going to try several solutions. So that's why you want to make sure to limit the money and time you spend on it, because you might discard all of it and try something different to solve this problem. So you want to have like a good balance between the cost and the amount of feedback you can gather. The goal of the MVP is to gather feedback. So try to maximize that. And you want valuable feedback. So you want the user to be as close as possible to the problem. So let's talk about how will you implement it. So you can involve yourself in different depths, right? You can first use no code. That can be helpful to do like landing page with a CTA, and you can optimize your SEO, and you can start building that like even before the prototype. You can have that out there just to make sure people know you're here. You can have the mailing list, like an input, like you want a CTA for people to be able to join your community. Database can be no code as well. Like there's platform like Airtable. For front end, that's where the no code shines the most, right? Because you can do like drag and drop and things like that. You can use Google website, WordPress, Wix, Notion, Squarespace. There's so many platforms nowadays. And the backend, you can do API, with automated pipeline like Zapier and workflow. So it's possible to put together and stitch a product using all those no-code solutions. But be aware that, like I said before, it might reach a point at which it's not scalable anymore, because most of them are paid per usage. And so as you get more users, you're gonna have a crazy bill. And you want to switch to like a in-house solution before the bill kills you. For people that are not that technical, there's usually three parts to a traditional product. So you would have the front end, that is like the user-facing part, the back end, which is managing the actions that you can do, and the database, which stores the data. Um, you can, for instance, do like a wireframe from Fever, hire a contractor. They're going to design your user UI. Then you hire a front-end person. I would recommend using React.js, kind of the standard nowadays. And then you hire a back-end person, maybe to do the back-end in Python or Node.js or Golang. And then for database, most of the use cases nowadays are like PostgreSQL works pretty fine for an MVP. But I mean, depend what you're building, but yeah. So who can build it, right? So it can be you if you're technical. So that would be low in dollar, but that would be very high in cost of time because that will take everything away from your agenda. You can hire an offshore team, so that would be an average cost, especially if they are in countries like India or Bangalore. Usually, it's cheaper, and it will take you less time out of your day because that you just have to do sync up meetings every now and then. It can become a headache though if you don't hire the right people, so that can be a risk. Sweat equity is also an interesting way to work. That will be low in terms of dollar, but you're gonna give parts of your company instead. And if you build the system correctly, you can build like a bounty board with tasks to be done and people to do it by themselves. So it shouldn't take too much of your time. Um, then you can have full-time employee. So that's usually the highest money, but that will be the highest quality because they are people that are passionate about the same problem as you and they want to be part of the team. And you're going to have to manage them the same way that you will manage an offshore team. So that's the same type of cost in time. Maybe you have a co-founder. So here it's perfect. You can each do a part of the business. Maybe they are more technical than you. So they're going to focus on the product and you're going to focus on the marketing, sale, and everything. So we talked about how to build the MVP by selecting specific features, but how do you choose which one to build first, and how do you eliminate some of them? So do you remember we were sorting all of those right by nice to have, not useful, and essential? And so it's obvious that you're gonna just keep the essential, right? But sometimes even the essential are a lot, and sometimes you have to choose which one you start with and how can you generate revenue as quickly as possible to increase your runway so you don't die before your prototype is finished. So you want to start by the end. What I mean is like a real deadline. So a deadline is like a deadline that is a real deadline. It's not something like, okay, I want it to be done by next month, right? It's like the runway of your company is like, we're gonna be dead by this moment. Or customer deliverable is like, here's the deadline for the contract. Or maybe a public announcement, you told everyone that it's gonna be done, next month. So that's a real deadline, with weight on it. Like you can't move it. So it's like a hard deadline, and you can make a checklist of things you want to be done by this moment, right? So then you have like all your features in a bucket that you want to be done by this date. So you have the list of things to do and a date, and you know that there is not enough time between today and then to do everything. So you need to choose, right? Let's focus on engineering project because that's my expertise, but you can think in terms of same methodology for other type of project. So that's the lever you have to modify an engineering project. You can change the scheduling, you can change the scope, you can change the quality, and you can change the quantity of people working on it. So let's go see each of them, right? So the schedule. Well, we just said like we were picking an immovable deadline, so you can't change it. Like the runway is not changing. You can change the quality. So during an MVP, you could cut corner, but be careful when you do so because you're going to accumulate tech debt, and tech debt is a debt you're going to have to pay, and usually it would be very costly. So try to do some things right because if you're sending a product to your user for the very first time and it's all buggy, they can't use it, they'll never come back. Even when you tell them, okay, now it's fixed, they'll be like, well, I have a bad experience, so I know you're building shit, I don't want to use it anymore, right? So be careful. If you think about yourself, have you ever been back to a platform that you had a bad experience with? Even if they call you back, if they scream, they tell you everything have changed, it won't work, right? So you can change the stuff, and that we're gonna talk about it more later when that's appropriate. But in general, you're gonna have like a curve that's stop. Like you can't bake a cake twice as fast using two ovens, right? And so you're gonna have this curve that's like flatten out as you hire more people because you can't communicate enough, you can't parallelize tasks, because tasks depend on each other. So you can create more teams if you have big budget, those type of thing, but At the beginning, you don't want dozens of engineers. So the only thing we can change is the scope, right? So going back to it, it's like, how do you choose which are the right tasks to tackle? So how do you choose the right task? All right, so let's do like step by step. I am a very pragmatic person. I'm an engineer, so I'm gonna give you the recipe. List all the tasks. You pick one that seems average, through the list, like one that seems like not the worst, not the best, it's just one. Give it an arbitrary number of points. So just give it, 5, 10, 100, like whatever you decide, but give it a point. It doesn't matter. There's no unit. It's just a number. Now you're gonna rate all the other tasks relatively to this one in terms of impact for the business. So, for instance, is this other task twice as rewarding as this one? Meaning, like, if you complete this task, your business will be twice as impacted by the first one. Then you look at another one, you're like, is it half as impactful, twice as impactful? Like, and you judge them like that. So maybe you're gonna have the first one at 100, then another one at 125, then another one at 78, then another one at 63. And you do like that, and you can come back, and rechange the number until you agree that with this list of maybe 20 features, you know how rewarding they are compared to each other. And as you grow, so let's dive in a bit. It's beyond the MVP, but if as you grow, you can keep doing that, and you should. And then you can tie to your KPI maybe, because maybe you want to increase conversion by 20% for quarter two. And so then now you have like a unit, right? You can see how much will this task impact this metric, supposedly, right? And so that will take some time, but when you have that, you're gonna have this list of which one is the most rewarding task. But hold on, because they're not all the same cost now. So let's do an example. So let's say you have a spreadsheet with a to-do list like that, and so you see that you have some of them that are like more marketing tasks and some that are more engineering tasks. So because you want to be able to compare them with each other, we're going to focus on like a specific department. And so for me, it would be engineering, right? So that's the engineering task you want to be done. And so then you did your business impact point, right? So there's like, the bug on page A that has been noticed by a customer. Maybe there is feature 3 and feature 4 and blah, blah, blah. And so now you see the impact on the business, right? But you don't know what the cost is because you don't know how long it will take to be built. You don't know how much it will take to be built. So that's when you bring in the engineering team. And you can do that with your offshore team. You can do that with yourself if you're the one doing the engineering. But what you want is to hide the reward point from the person that do the cost, right? If it's yourself, take a day off between the two. If it's your other team, never show them the business point, only ask them the cost. And then you do the exact same thing. You put one of the task, you give it some point, and you compare with each other. It's like, is this one twice as hard? Is this one half as hard, etc., etc. And and you want to do that in terms of time and money and complexity. So same thing. It's like there's no unit, right? It's just relative to each other. So then you're gonna have something maybe like that. And you notice that the two numbers they're not exactly aligned, right? Maybe the business impact is not the same scale as the cost point, but it's fine, right? In theory, you could normalize it, but it doesn't matter. What matters is then now you're gonna do the return on investment calculation. So you take the reward and you divide it by the cost, and then you get this percentage. And then you can sort it, and now you know exactly what the ROI of those tasks are. And now you know that. So if you're using Agile, remember it was one of the pre-requirements, and we can talk about it more in the Q&A. But you should know how many points can your team build per cycle. And when I say your team, it can be an offshore team, right? If you do that with your offshore team, you know that they produce 50 points per cycle per week, maybe. And it doesn't you don't need to know how many engineers are in the team. You don't need to know how many people are working there. You just talk with your point of contact, and you tell them like, okay, I want you to point all those tickets, and then I want you to do this and that, and then at the end of the week you're like, okay, they've done this and that, and every week you do that, so you know that in average they do 50 points per week. And now that you know how many tasks you can tackle until your deadline. So if your deadline is in 8 weeks, you know that you can do 8 times 50 points, and so you can take the top few tasks to tackle. Is everybody okay with that?
And there's a question from Neil. He would like if you could elaborate on the aspect of hiding the reward points from different teams.
Oh yeah. So imagine you give your team this type of thing. Like you're gonna introduce biases because let's say I come to you, you're an engineer, and I tell them, okay, there is this task. If you can complete it, it will be amazing to the business. How hard it is, and please be honest. You're gonna be like, oh shit, I can't tell them it's like so hard. I have to lower it a little bit, even unconsciously. You're gonna lower the point because you know that the expectation is so high that you don't want to disappoint your manager or your team or your leader. Like you're gonna tell them, yeah, it's this number, even though you know it's harder, right? And same thing if it's the other way around. If it's like a very low business impact, you don't want to tell them it's really hard because like then you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot. It's like, okay, this one is impossible, and it bring you nothing, and then the manager would be like, why are you telling me it's hard because it has no impact on the business? Like it should be easy, right? So people are gonna unconsciously connect the business impact with the cost. So you want to do it as objective as possible. It's like just tell me the cost so that it can be independent numbers. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. So now a few tips and assess and trouble strategies for when you're having challenges, right? So should you hire? The question you should ask yourself is like, do I have enough in the pipeline that it's interesting to hire engineers or like more engineers if you already have some? And if you already have some, it's like, can you parallelize it? Because if the process is linear and you need to wait on each task before starting the next one, hiring more people won't make any improvement. Is the team asking for it? Because as a engineer are proud of their work, right? And they're like, no, I can do it, no worries. But you want to really create this culture where they can talk openly to you, so they can tell you, it's like, okay, I'm feeling burnout, like we should hire more people because there is too much on my shoulder. And that's a great atmosphere where the team can tell you, it's like, we need more people. And in theory you should feel that before it happens, so you don't, because hiring people takes time, so you want it to be ready. But you don't want to hire people if your team is fine. Like if your team don't need anyone, don't hire someone, because they're gonna have to train them and it will slow everything down, right? Also, do you have a good onboarding process? Because if you hire a few more people but you need to spend months training them and giving and bringing them up to speed, it might not be advantageous. I don't know if you read the book Blitzscaling on Airbnb. Like that's how they killed the European market, right? They hired, I don't know how many, like 1,000 employees in a few months because because they had a crazy onboarding process. Let's say you have low visitor traffic on your website. So that might be because of SEO. So maybe you don't target the right keywords, or maybe that can also be high bounce rate. So it's when people come on your platform and leave very quickly. So you can see all of that if you're using, I don't know, like any Google Analytics tools, or like if you do the Lighthouse inspection tool on Chrome. Nowadays there's so many tools for that. It gives you like the loading speed, the bounce rate, like all of that. Maybe nobody knows about it, like, so you need to do more marketing. You need to increase writing blogs, have links pointing to your website, have be more present in news, have like some referral strategies so people can invite each other. So let's say now you have a high traffic but low conversion. That means people are visiting your website but they don't become customers. So that can be because of UI UX. Maybe it's horrible to use your website. Like you click somewhere, you don't know where you're going. You click somewhere, it takes time to load. So try to reduce the friction. Also improve the copy, the wording, and the branding, because maybe people arrive on your website and they're like, oh, why am I here? Is that able to solve my problem? Maybe it's a business model. Maybe they don't want to sign up because it's too expensive. So you can try to offer like maybe a first 15 day for free, or like so they can try and see if it's really something they want. If they don't convert after the free trial, you want to conduct an interview and ask them why, especially in the MVP phase. You want to know why they did not convert. Also, you can reduce, maybe you having too much traffic that is not relevant to your website because you're using paid advertisement and you're not targeting the right persona. And so you have all those people coming that don't have the problem you're trying to solve. You can use A/B testing to test different versions if you have enough traffic. So now high conversion but low retention. So I mean, you have visitors, they convert, but then they never come back. So that can also be because of UI UX. Maybe your product to solve the solution, but in a very convoluted way that's not easy to do. Maybe too much friction. So you need to press like 500 buttons to be able to use the product, or you spend like hours and hours to parameterize and configure it, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really solve the problem. Maybe it's too expensive, or maybe it's too not clear enough what the pricing strategy is, and maybe you don't have enough features to simply. So in terms of traffic conversion and retention, people usually show it that way, where you have like the traffic coming in, then you have the conversion, and then you have the retention. But I like to think about it that way as well, because if you for instance, it's useless to pay for advertisement, marketing, SEO expert, etc., if you can't convert the traffic, right? Because you're gonna just bring them to the platforms, they're gonna bounce out and hurt your domain reputation in terms of SEO. Similarly, it's useless to focus on complex A/B testing and crazy referral incentive if people are leaving after a week because the product is bad. So in theory, you want to have a perfect product, then focus on conversion, then increase the traffic so that you get more and more customer. But it's interesting because you also need the traffic to be able to optimize the conversion, and you need the conversion to be able to improve the product. You need the feedback. So it's like this loop, right? It's not just one way or another, because you need each other to be able to improve each other. I don't know if you guys want to do Q&A now or continue. I have a section on how to attract talent. I don't know if it's useful to anybody.
Let's say so. There are a few questions. If
Okay.
you like, I take them.
Yeah, let's
There's
stop for questions.
okay. There's one where the question is, if you could share some tips on finding early adopters.
Yeah, so you want to have a very specific persona, like very, very specific, very niche. Like I don't know what the problem is, but let's say the problem is how to, I don't know, clean up lobsters. Like try to find like a market that is very, very small. Like go to this one city that is reputable for lobster and where people have this problem every day. Like you want to find the people that have the highest pain experiencing this problem, and cater a solution and a sales strategy and a marketing strategy just for them, so that you can be very, very close to your target and have interaction with them and talk with them. If you open it to the world, you won't be able to create a community, because someone in, I don't know, Hong Kong won't be able to relate to someone that lives in Toronto, right? As easily as if they all live next to each other. If your neighbors are using your products, then you're gonna want to use it too. So try to focus on specific geographic and specific demographic, and on specific like mindset. do you want to sell this product to create like satisfaction, create happiness, create alleviate the pain, like, and you want to really focus on this specific target. And then when you have them, investigate, try to find the people that fit this target, talk to them, try to figure out where they hang out, where do they hang out with their friends that are similar to them, and start marketing and advertising your solution to this group.
Okay, thank you. Then there's one, okay, which is about how we should communicate the MVP to the user.
So there are different ways you can do it. You can either say it's an early access, it's a beta. You can also talk directly with the customer and be like, "Are you interested in building the product with me?" You know, they're gonna tell you what features they like, and you're gonna implement them. So you're building the product together, and so you want to be clear that the product is changing quickly. So you want people to tell them like, it's like, don't, you want to reduce, it's like, under promise and over deliver type of thing, right? You don't want to tell them it's amazing because then they're going to be disappointed. You want to tell them it's the first version, I'm opening it to the public, are you okay joining this experience with me? Like, make them part of the team.
Okay, and then there's a tool which is a little bit linked, is to who the MVP should be addressed. This means, shall we address it to those where we can make a mistake, or when something goes wrong, it doesn't matter, or shall we immediately address it to the high value end user and customer we would like to address?
Yeah, no, never target the biggest reward right away, because it's like, when you do an interview, like, don't go interview with your favorite company right away because you're gonna be out of practice. You need to go practice with a company you don't really care about, so that you can improve. And then when you feel ready, you get there. It's kind of like the practice trial, right? And you don't want to practice at the Olympics. You want to practice at the local team on Sunday afternoon, just so you can get your footing, find what the market wants. And then, you can come to them. And you also want to create user stories, because let's say your MVP has one or two customers, and for them, they're, I don't know, sales or time to market, improve by 80%. Then you can use those testimony and go to the big guys and tell them, it's like, look, all those people, they increase their delivery, their sale by 80%. Do you want in?
Okay, thank you. And then there are one or the other which is a little linked. It is, okay, when an MVP is something which changes, where there are iterations, and how shall we communicate those iterations to the users who are using the MVP?
So you absolutely want to iterate on the MVP, because the goal of the MVP is to collect feedback. And so if you have a good channel of communication with your early user, they will most likely be the one suggesting those changes. Like, maybe you have a Discord server and where everybody can exchange, and they're gonna tell you, "Oh, I wish there is that," and then other people will be like, "Oh yes, I wish there will be that. That'd be amazing." And then in the newsletter, you can tell them, "Look, we've done it. We've done what you asked. We have these amazing features that you asked for." You can also use those as as material for marketing announcement. You can tell the world, here we implemented this and that. The product is growing. So I think if you are implementing the right feature, the user will be super excited to learn about it. Like, maybe they stopped using the product because they were missing it, and now they're gonna go back to it because you finally did it. So you absolutely want to iterate on the product, and you want to communicate to the users that what they've asked for is finally here.
Yes, thank you. That touches a little bit on the question, when is an MVP not an MVP anymore? When do we know that it's not an MVP anymore?
I think so. If you use no code for MVP, and then you convert it to like real code for the product, then one other things might be when you start seeing your metric, like sales going up, retention is going up. That means you reach product market fit. People are willing to pay for your product and they come back for it. So at this moment, now it's product. Like you can start opening it to more people.
Thank you. And then there's a little bit, there are two which are linked to the business model part a little bit. When is a good, how to move from an MVP business model? This means we have an MVP and okay, we are there in order to gather feedback, but also to cover some costs. And how to move from that model to, let's say, a sustainable business model with a product or service.
Yeah. So when you want to test the business model, you want to test the kind of like the concept of the business model. You don't, and the pricing will change over time, right? So if it's a subscription, for instance, you want to test that people subscribe and stay subscribed. If it's a one-off, you want to see that people come back and pay for more. If it's I don't know, like a store, you want to see that people come. Like, so you want to see that people go through the sales cycle, but then as the business goes and it become less and less of a prototype and more of a real product, you can start increasing the prices to increase your margin. So at first you're gonna lose some money because you're gonna be in the research phase, and you try to reduce this time by speeding up your iteration steps. So if we go back to the slide I had many slides ago, somewhere here. So the loop here between prototype, getting more user, getting more feedback, and iterating, the faster you can go through this loop, the faster you increase your revenue, and then faster you're gonna get profit. Because as you get more user, you get more feedback that allow you to add more features that user wants. So then they're gonna talk about their friends like, oh, come in, there's more and more things that is amazing at solving the problem. And then you can start changing the price as time goes by, so you can increase your margin. So the faster you go through this loop, the faster you'll be out of the red zone.
Thank you. There are two more questions, but if you, dear listeners, viewers, have more questions, just shoot them and we go through them. Then is one also a little bit on the cost side. There are two on the cost side, on the financial side. What if, for example, even for the MVP, the technological development needs requests either technical resources or financial resources, is it then still worthwhile to do an MVP? Because the result, the outcome may be lower, the rewards may be lower. What would you suggest?
Yeah, but like developing a full-on product, for instance, might cost you like 50 grand to like an offshore team, and it will take you 3 months. So during 3 months, you're like almost on pause, and you're gonna spend $50,000, and then when it's out, you might realize that nobody wants it. Or you can build a prototype that costs you, less than 10,000, takes you like a month, and you can start collecting more feedback so that when you decide to build the real product, you're gonna hit it on the right target. So I think if you want to be risky, you can spend all the money up front and take the risk of not having a product that is what the market wants. Or you can take the more careful approach and do step by step towards a product that people want.
Thank you. And I'm taking the last question now, which is, I think you addressed it a little bit, but what is it? If you have an MVP customer now, who is
Mhm.
paying something, and how do you go to convince this customer to pay the full price when it's not an MVP anymore? Because the
So you do
customer,
that. You do that slowly. Like in the contract, for instance, when you sign up, you tell them it will be at a discount rate for the first year, maybe. So at the end of the year, they know it's going to increase. Or you do like Netflix doing, like they did it like last month, right? It's like they increase slowly the month rate, the monthly fees. And in theory, as you acquire more user, it's not a terrible cost for you to have one customer or two at a lower rate, because the margin of the other should cover for those expenses. At the same time, you can also upsell them, like you leave them with like a low subscription, but maybe with the new features, you tell them, okay, if you want this extra feature, it's an extra few bucks per month. And so maybe their main subscription is cheap, but the addition you put on it will increase your return for this user. So you can use upsell, you can use a time discount, you can use slow increase in price.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Leo. And in order to wrap up, now, what would you, for those who are going on the MVP road, as a conclusion or as final advices, what to do, what not to do, or what to take care of if they would like to take that road?
Make sure to know your return on investment for each action you take, no matter what it is, even if it's like writing an article, talking to someone. Always try to see like what is the cost in terms of time, money, everything, and what is the reward on your business in terms of impact, user acquisition, returns, revenue, etc. And that will help you, guide your decision.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Leo, for sharing with us your insight and also for this workshop. And for everybody, you know where to reach out for Leo. You can get ask further questions, and also the recording will be available soon. Thank you very much, Leo, for having played the game again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.